Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to install the classic Windows theme in Windows 8.1. Those of you who have used this operating system before know that if you right click on the desktop and go to personalize, there's no actual option to enable the classic theme that we're used to from the days of like Windows 2000 through to even Windows 7 had the option to do this. It was removed in Windows 8 onwards. I mean, you can click this and it gives you something that looks a tiny bit like it, but it's still pretty much terrible. So we're going to just go back to our regular theme, and I'm going to show you how to install the official classic theme, because a little known fact about Windows 8 and also Windows 10 is that the classic theme is still in the operating system. It's just not selectable. Essentially the Metro theme, which is what Windows 8 uses, which is this theme, just runs on top of it. But through some tricks we can actually force it to run as the main theme. So I've included in the description a download link with a zip file which has this folder in it. You'll notice that there's an instructions file in here. So what I'm going to do in this video is essentially work through this with you and explain how to do everything. So I've included everything that you're going to need to do this in here. So before we actually start installing the theme, there's a couple of preparation things we have to do. The first is to install Classic Shell. So if I go into my preparation folder, I can install Classic Shell here. What this essentially does is it gives you a start menu back on Windows 8. And also there's the ability to install Classic Explorer and Classic IE. These don't really matter as much. We just want the start menu, but we'll just install all of it anyway. It doesn't really make too much of a difference. But in particular, we're going to want that start menu. So if we come down here and click start now, we have a menu back. If I right click it and go to settings, make sure that show all settings is checked so we can see everything. If I come in here and go to the start menu style, I can select between these. If I pick the classic one, we have this, which looks like the classic one from the old days. But I'm going to use the Windows 7 one for this video. I'll go to select skin, pick classic skin, take the user picture off, use small icons, use 3D borders. And now we have a theme that looks like the classic theme. So I'm also going to come back to this bit here. I'm going to click replace start button, hit custom, and I'm going to navigate to this folder in preparation. I've included some start buttons that I've compiled myself. So there's one from Windows 2000, which is the really old one, which is probably what a lot of you are going to use this with because it looks really cool. There's also the Windows Whistler one, which is the beta version of Windows XP. It's very similar to the Windows 2000 one, but there's some slight differences. I thought I'd include that just for the sake of it. There's also the one that came with Windows Vista and Windows 7 if you prefer that. But my personal favourite is the one that came with Windows XP, so I'm going to use that for this video. So now we're done with Classic Shell for the moment. To make the taskbar look more correct, I'm going to right click on it, hit Properties, use small taskbar buttons, and change the taskbar buttons section to Never Combine. What this does is it forces it to be a small taskbar like what we're used to in the older versions of Windows. Okay, so I now need to install Legacy Task Manager. The reason for this is that when the classic theme runs on Windows 8, the original Task Manager, which you get to by right clicking on the taskbar and hitting Task Manager, it just simply won't load. This just won't load, it will just disappear straight away. So we have to install this older version, which is the one that was used in Windows 7 and before. So we don't need the desktop icon, we'll just install that. So we don't need to do it right now, but I can just have a quick look at it and show you that it is actually different. It's the older one now. Okay, so now Ribbon Disabler. This file you're going to want to keep even if you get rid of all this other stuff later on, because if you ever do an update on Windows 8, this will actually revert and you have to do this again. But you just open it, click disable. Before I do this, I'll show you what it normally looks like. So this is what Windows 8 looks like. You've got this ugly ribbon view, really not nice at all. So what I'll do is I'll disable that, and it's going to require me to log off, so I'll just log out, log back in, and when I next boot up Windows Explorer, it should look more like what you're used to if you were using Windows 7 or before, where, yep, we now have this file pane here, or file bar, sorry, and it just looks more, oops, what am I doing? It just looks more like what you're used to. So if I go back to my folder, open up my instructions again, and then there's one other thing that I've said, this is optional, but I highly recommend doing it anyway. It improves functionality of the taskbar and makes things a lot cleaner and quicker. If you install 7 Plus Taskbar Tweaker, just go ahead and install this. Okay, so we want it to run at startup. There's a couple of things that you want to do in here. We want to change right click from jump list to standard menu. If I right click something on the taskbar right now, it gives me this ugly jump list, which takes forever to load, well, comparatively. If I change it to standard menu, we get this, which is what we want. We can leave these. For hovering, we change that to nothing, so that there's no like preview that comes up. And for grouping, we change it to don't group. Now the rest of these you can change if you like. There's a lot of cool functionality in here. Personally, I like to have the seconds on the clock down here, so I'm going to choose that. Okay, we're now ready to actually install the theme. So if I go into the second folder, a bunch of things that need to be done in here. So the first thing that we have to do is move the contents of this folder, which are the source folder, classic theme A, and fixed strips.exe, into a folder in the C drive called classic. Now this doesn't exist, so I'm going to come in here and actually create it. Just type in the word classic, and then I can just copy and paste these into here. Okay, so we're done with that. So we're now going to run the first registry file. I've included 4 of these in the folder. If you want to see what it does, I've included the actual text from it in the instructions. So I'll just run this. Just say yes, hit OK. So that's done. It's done something to my registry. So now we're going to right click from the start menu, the PC, hit manage, and we're going to schedule some tasks to run whenever we log on to this user account. So now that I'm in computer management, I'll click task scheduler. From over here, I'll click create task, and we're going to create 2 of these. The first one we're going to call classic, and again this is all listed in here. Exactly what you have to do is listed in here. So in the general tab, which we're in right now, I'm going to select to run only when the user is logged on, and also run with the highest privileges. In the triggers tab, I'll create a new trigger, and I'm going to set it to start when I log on. It doesn't really matter if you pick any user or a specific user, but since there's only one user account on this virtual machine, I'll just pick that. Okay, in your actions tab, we want to set two actions in here. So it's always going to be start a program. The first one is this line here, which is just c/classic/ whatever. I'll just put that in there. So essentially when I log on, this file that we moved into this classic folder is going to be launched. And this is what actually enables the theme to work properly, or to work at all. But we also have to add another one. If you just copy and paste this other line in here, straight into here, then hit OK and hit yes, what this actually does is it chooses this schedule tasks.exe as the program, and then these are the commands that it's going to run on it. So just go with that. You'll notice that it's calling another task, which we're going to create in just a second. So go into conditions, take this off because we want the task to run at all times. Come in here and take this off because we don't want the task to be stopped. Okay, so now we're going to create a second task. We're going to call this one classic 2. As you saw in the previous one, this is going to be called upon by the first task. So same as before, only in this time in the general tab, we're going to have it run only when the user is logged on, but we're going to leave this highest privileges thing off. Triggers, it's just the same as before. We're going to have log on for this user. Actions, we're just going to copy and paste, where is it? Here. And what this will do is it will run the command line, which is what CMD is, and then these are the commands that it will run on it. So we'll just do that. Conditions, again, take off the AC power supply. This probably isn't here if you're using like a desktop, but I'm on a laptop, so it's there. And settings will turn this thing about the task stopping off. So our tasks are now created. You can come into Task Scheduler Library, and you can see them both in there. They're set to go when I log on. Cool. So the next thing, we're going to run the second registry file, and this just changes some like display settings essentially. Don't worry about it, just trust me that you have to do it. So we'll run that, and that's done that. So the next thing that we'll do, step 6, is we'll go onto our desktop, right click, personalization, brings us to our themes page. We're going to click color, going to pick any random one, doesn't matter, then hit show color mixer and move all 4 of the sliders to the far left. Hit save changes. Okay, so the next step is to run the third registry file. Now what this does is it moves the fixedstrips.exe file that we put into C Classic, and moves it into your startup folder, which means that whenever you boot into Windows, this fixedstrips.exe file will launch. And running the third registry file will do that for you automatically, so we'll just do that. Okay, so you'll see what that file does in a couple minutes when I get to it. So in Classic Shell, we want to disable the transparency on the taskbar. You can't natively do this on Windows 8, so you have to use something like Classic Shell. You can do this by just going in here and right-clicking it and making your way over to it here, or you can just run this registry file here. It hasn't actually done it right now, but I think once I log off and log back on, it might. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't really know that this step is required, but it was in the original description of this method, so I've included it just for the sake of it. Okay, so the next step, we're going to access our registry, so we're just going to hold the Windows key on the keyboard, press R, type regedit, obviously I've done this before, and we're going to navigate to this folder here. So it's hkey local machine /software /Microsoft /Windows /current version /themes /default colors. We're going to find that folder and we're just going to delete the entire folder. So let's see, I think I've probably, yeah, okay, so hkey local machine, software, Microsoft, and not Windows NT, I'm looking for just regular Windows, then current version, then themes, and here's the folder. Just select it and hit delete. And just get rid of it, so we don't need that. Okay, now finally, I've also included in the installing the classic theme folder this white taskbar fix. Now you don't know what that means yet, but you will in a minute. In here I've included a batch file. You can see it here, it's Windows batch file. It's essentially going to call upon this .exe to do something. But what we want to do first is to take this .exe, copy it, and put it in that classic folder that we created earlier on. So we'll just stick that in here. Sorry, no, ignore me. Don't put it in the classic folder, just put it in, we want to put it in C, users, and your user folder. That's where you want to put it, right? I mean, you can customize this if you like, as you're about to see, but now that that's in there, we can come back to the batch file, we can right click it and hit edit. This will open it in Notepad, and you can see in here the commands that are going to run when I run this batch file. So essentially all you need to do is change this bit here in each of the lines to the location that you just actually specified when you moved the file. In my case, the reason I put it in there is because I've already written the batch file and I want it to run from C/user/David, but in your case you can just put it in that same folder and change your name, then file, save, and that's you. So when you run this from now on, it will fix an issue which as of right now we haven't seen, but you'll see it in a couple minutes time. Okay, so what we now want to do is right click this, hit create shortcut, and we're going to move this shortcut into our startup folder, meaning that when we boot up into Windows, it's going to launch this straight away. So what I'll do now is I'll hold the Windows key, hit R, and type in shell :startup. This is our startup folder. So I'm just going to move this shortcut into here. Okay, so the theme is essentially installed now. When I log off and log back on, it will trigger. So let's see what happens when we do that. I'll just quickly log out and log back on. I don't have a password set here, but it doesn't matter if you do, it works just fine either way. Okay, so you'll notice that straight away these two windows popped up. That's the tasks that we scheduled. It just causes that to happen. Now, these windows aren't in the classic theme, but if you look at the taskbar, you'll notice that certain things are happening. The transparency was just disabled, and yeah, essentially that was the classic theme applying. So if I close these down and I right click here and for instance click properties, okay, maybe not properties, but maybe task manager, because properties is part of Explorer, but task manager is a separate thing, and now you can see it's using the classic theme. Now it doesn't look quite right just yet, but we'll fix that in a couple minutes time. But I mean, the issue here is that you notice that those two Explorer windows came up before. What really should be happening is that the classic script should run, and then that should happen, but I think for some reason those were opening too early. Explorer was running too quickly. As a result of that, it hasn't applied to the Explorer process. But for instance, anything else, like if I open, I don't know, control panel. Okay, never mind, that's Explorer too. But okay, what to do is just right click here, go to Task Manager, and it's going to open up our legacy Task Manager. Find the Explorer process, hit end process, and then go to run our file, new task, and type in explorer.exe. This will relaunch Explorer, and now it has the classic theme applied to it. Now it still doesn't look quite right, but we'll get to that in just a second. If I go back to my folder, okay, it's just relaunched 7 Plus Taskbar Tweaker. If I go back to my folder, open up my instructions again, you can see now actually that Explorer windows are themed in the classic style, but it's still not quite right. If I go down to the maintenance section, so we're going to navigate to C Classic, which was in here, and then open up the source file and open up this file in here, the .cpl, the control panel file. And when I open this up, it lets me customize the theme. So I'm going to pick the last preset one because this is the one that we want to use. But if you want, you can customize bits and pieces of it, change the size of things and so on. But I'm just going to use it as is. So if I click that, we now have what looks like the classic theme as we know and love it. Just ignore this, it did actually run correctly. So the only issue is that, well, you can see that the taskbar is still incorrect. It's white, and there's actually another issue which might be harder to see. There's a strip that runs along the top of it. But so essentially, because I had to kill Explorer and restart it to get it to work on Explorer, this has happened. This won't always happen for you. Sometimes when you boot into Windows, it will just work straight away, but sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, what you have to do is go back into your folder, go into maintenance, and I've named it correctly here. If the taskbar glitches, run the files in this folder, and then you can also customize it from in here if you want. But so this is fix strips, which we moved into the startup folder. If I run that again, it will fix the one of the graphical issues here. It's hard to tell because it's a white background, but it did actually do something. And then I can run our batch file again, and it gives us the nice grey that we're after. So I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, the theme is now working. We now have the classic theme, and just to prove to you that this is actually Windows 8.1, I'll go into Control Panel, System, and there you go, Windows 8, 8.1 Pro. And it's using the classic theme. It works very well. There's only a few small issues. One of which, for instance, if I come in here and type in paint, for some reason, even with Ribbon Explorer on, the ribbon view is still forced in paint. There's no way around this that I know of. There's also a grey bar up here which you can't get rid of, but it's a very minor detail. Most things don't have issues like this. But one other thing that I should mention, if you happen to change, if you do anything that sort of like changes Explorer.exe, like if you change the start button to, say, the Windows Whistler one, you'll notice that the strip issue on the top of the taskbar and the whiteness have come back. So in that case, you have to then go back in here and just run these programs again. There you go, fixed. So the last thing I want to talk about is the browsers. If I open up Google Chrome and Firefox, I'm only covering these two because these are really the only ones that anyone bothers with in 2018. You can see straight away that it's pretty buggy, but we'll come to this in a minute. Just make sure the other one's actually opened. Nope, went and opened it twice. Brilliant. So I'll get rid of one of these if it would let me. Okay, so we'll do Chrome first. As you can see, there's transparency at the top of it. These buttons up here, though you can see them sometimes, they don't actually do anything. You can still maximize it by double clicking, but the buttons up here, they don't do anything. You can still close it by right clicking it down here and doing this, but we don't want to have to do that. So in the instructions I've included some themes that actually fix this problem. To tell you the truth, in Google Chrome, essentially any third-party theme will fix this issue. It's just the default theme that doesn't work. But the one that I like to use is the Windows XP Royale Noir theme. So I'm going to install that, and straight away it's now back to normal. All of this works. If you're wondering about getting the classic buttons up here, it's not possible on Chrome. They removed that functionality some years ago, and it now has like its own set of buttons, but you know, it's fine. So in Firefox, similar issue. You can sort of get these to appear and they still don't work. What you want to do is click this menu button over here, hit customize, and we're going to put title bar on, and we're also going to go to toolbars and put menu bar on. So now these buttons actually do work, but you can see that there's still transparency. So what we'll do to fix that is we'll install the corresponding Royale Noir theme for Firefox. I should say when it comes to Firefox that not all themes will fully fix the issues, but this one pretty much does. I think there's still like maybe one or two tiny little hiccups with it, but you know, for the most part it's fine. The only sort of issue is like the title bar still has transparency in it. But you know, you can disable that anyway. If you go back into customize, you can just come in here and turn that off, and there you go. It's pretty much perfect, but now you don't have buttons up here that work. So you know, you have to pick your poison a little bit. But I mean, it's completely usable, which is the main part. So yeah, with these in mind, you're pretty much set to use the classic theme. I guess the last thing I'll do is just quickly go back in here, customize it a little bit, because I don't know why it didn't do this, but I'm going to change my desktop to black, and it didn't do anything. Which actually is a good thing, because now I can show you what another issue is. So certain things that won't work with this, if you right click and go to personalize, this screen won't display. However, if you click appearance and personalization from up here, if you have this option, it's not here in every version of Windows 8.1 because this is actually a slightly older version. The most up-to-date one has a slightly different navigation system up here, but if you can get yourself to this page, you can click change the desktop background and do it manually from in here. So let's just pick a nice solid black for maximum contrast against the taskbar. But really what I would propose to fix this completely is to install this other software called WinAero Tweaker. I'll link to this in the description. And what it lets you do is it lets you edit this context menu, and you can put like a drop list here for personalization, which lets you access all those individual pages and therefore lets you bypass having to go through here. But yeah, that's how you use the classic theme on Windows 8. Hopefully this has been nice and informative. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'll try to answer them. I'm not an expert at this stuff. I've sort of mostly put this together from other stuff that I found online. Particularly the tutorial by Annex on the Win Classic message boards. But I found that to be somewhat hard to understand at times, and missing bits that I find actually help the theme quite a lot to make it look better. But yeah, just to answer one question that I'm sure is going to come up, does this work on Windows 10? The answer is yes and no. You can do a similar process, not this exact one, but something similar to get some of the classic theme working on Windows 10, but it's not as robust. It's got a lot more issues, a lot more things don't work with it, and the taskbar is a whole other issue which the theme doesn't really apply to, as far as I know, on Windows 10. My advice to you, if you're using Windows 10 and you want the classic theme, just go to Windows 8.1. It's a better operating system, it's faster, it's so much less bloated, and with all the things that I've shown you here, you can not only get the classic theme but get a start menu, so everyone's biggest complaint about 8 is gone. Oh, and just on that note, if you are using Windows 8, the start screen actually does still work. Everything on here is completely functional, so yeah, you even have that. And the Metro apps all work too. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Whenever that is.